I'm going back to reading Off the Page by Jodi Picoult and Samantha Van Leer. And I will be on the third chapter. Let me try to pull up my chat here. There it is. Okay. So the third chapter on page 37. There we go. Edgar. How come things are never as awesome as you want them to be? The first day of kindergarten, my mom told me it would be amazing. I'd have so much fun riding the bus and making new friends, and I'd get to spend the whole day doing exciting things with other kids my age. This was the reality. On the bus, a kid threw up in the seat next to me. We spent 2 hours tracing the letter A over and over and over. And at recess, a girl tossed sand in my face, nearly blinding me. Oh yeah, those are totally going to be the best days of my life. I figured that here it would be different. After all, this was my idea. This was kindergarten all over again, except I was teaching the class. I made all the decisions, and nothing could happen unless I wanted it to. And yet, well, I can't say I'm not disappointed. Don't get me wrong, it's still cool to get to wield a laser gun and meet an actual live dragon. It's great to be the center of attention for once instead of the kid whose name everyone forgets. And I genuinely like the people I'm with. Frump is always at my side, which rocks considering that the only pet I've ever been allowed to have is a hermit crab that slowly lost all its limbs, and it was just depressing. Seraphima looks especially hot in spandex, intergalactic space fighter suit. Captain Crab is nice, but he's kind of obsessed with teeth, and every time I try to strike up a conversation with him, I catch him checking out my overbite. As for Socks, I've never met someone with even less self-esteem than me, but he's always the first one to ask me how my day is going or to invite me to go for a trot on the beach. The thing is, although I've rewritten the plot so that Oliver can live outside the book and I can take his place inside it, although every character in here with me knows the new story and has practiced it endlessly, we're the only ones who know anything has changed. Delilah has the only copy of Between the Lines, and she hasn't cracked it open since the switch, which I guess I understand since she was reading it because Oliver was inside, and now it's just me in here. But without a reader, a story is only half complete. It's like blueprints that never get built, like a swimming pool without water. The foundation's there, but it's useless. Without a reader, the words just sit on a page, waiting to come alive in someone's imagination. This morning, just like every other morning, I've been here. I am awakened by the sound of Pyro doing his 7 a.m. flyby. Roosters have nothing on dragons, which sounds like a cross between a howler monkey and a braying donkey. I have no idea how he doesn't wake up the entire kingdom as he streaks his way across all 60 pages. I blink at the stone ceiling of the castle, still kind of expecting my mom to walk in and tell me I'm going to be late for school. Then I sit up and let my gaze fall on the spacesuit draped over the golden chair in the corner of the room. In the news story, I lead the citizens of the kingdom to battle the galactoids from the planet Zugon in order to bring down the mighty Zorg. It involves the kidnapping of Space Princess Seraphima, which starts an intergalactic war and includes trolls swiping spaceships from the sky with their meaty paws, fairies listening in on top secret meetings, giving new meaning to the term fly on the wall, mermaids running covert submarine operations into the core of the earth, and Ravsculio being exposed as a double agent working as a henchman for Zorg. The skeleton of the story was part of a video game I used to play, back in the other world. All I did was connect the dots. I used to spend 6 hours a day with a controller in my hands. Sometimes I'd even wake up thinking about ways to make it to the next level. It's every gamer's dream to actually live as your avatar. To swing the sword instead of pushing a button to make it happen. To kiss the princess instead of watching the action unfold on screen while your score goes through the roof. I'm totally psyched to be here. I am. I just have to keep reminding myself. After I get dressed and brush my teeth, I head down the spiral staircase, sniffing out the source of the heavenly aroma that has been wafting through the castle. I find Queen Maureen wearing her silver supersuit, her platinum braceleted wrists sunk in a bowl of dough. "Good morning, Edgar," she says, smiling brightly. "How did you sleep?" "Great, until the dragon flew by." "He is an early riser," she muses. "You get used to it." I grab a scone from the stack that's still warm from the oven and grunt in response. Maureen hesitates and then offers me a half smile. "I was just wondering, do you mind if I finish baking before I come down to rehearsal? After all, it's been weeks since we were read. Surely it won't be a problem if I miss an hour to finish this pain au chocolat?" When I don't answer right away, she wipes her hands on the dish towel. "That's fine then, I can always finish later." "No, no," I reply. "Whatever, stay if you want to. If we need you, you're only a shout away." Her face brightens. "I'll let you have the first taste," she promises. I strap on my laser pistol and my force field interrupter, planning to head down to the Ever After beach to rehearse. I have to admit, it took a little while to get used to living in 2 dimensions. When you first walk through this world, it feels like you're crossing through a pop-up picture book. Pluck a flat apple off a tree, and in your hand it somehow morphs into something tangible, luscious, and real. I'm not sure if that's because it actually becomes a true apple, or because I am as flat as it is. And it's disconcerting to have to leap the fault line that the spine of the book creates to get from a left-hand page to a right-hand one. There's gravity here, but it's different. It's not like being in water, where you have to work to stay sunken. But it's not as strong as the pull in the real world either. I can easily do a backflip or climb a sheer rock without breaking a sweat. Everything is somehow effortless. And there are no maps and no roads to speak of. You don't count turns, you count pages. To get from the castle to Orville's cottage, for example, is 7 jumps. And moving from page to page isn't just continuing down a path. You step off into a great black dizzying nothing, letters swinging overhead, and suddenly find yourself standing at your destination without any memory of how you got there. Just when I pass the drawbridge on my way out of the castle, Pyro screams overhead and I turn around. For just a moment, I'm not seeing the scene in front of me. The path leading to the castle winds and twists in the exact same pattern as my driveway at home, which I remember failing to back out of while practicing to get my driver's license. My whole body aches, and I realize there's a reason it's called being homesick. Suddenly, I want nothing more than to be sitting in my kitchen with my mom, giving me the same old cereal boxes to choose from. I want her to yell at me to pick up the clothes littering my bedroom floor. I want, well, my mom. My mother created this book. Her fingerprints are bound to be all over it. But the whole point of coming into the fairy tale was to have an adventure, and I'm not going to let a little bit of homesickness ruin that for me. I take a deep breath and turn away from the castle walkway, which might look familiar, but is actually a whole world away from what I'm used to. Ever After Beach is the last page of the book, so it takes the longest to reach from the castle. I hike through the enchanted forest, past the troll bridge and Orville's cottage. Grimacing, I dive off the cliff into the ocean, past the mermaid scene, and emerge dripping wet on the shores where Pyro lives. By the time I get to Captain Crab's ship, I know I'm late because nobody's around. So I scale the rock wall extra fast and dive out the window, somersaulting onto Ever After Beach. Frump stands on a stump, trying to get the attention of the others. The trolls biggle and snort and are having a laser fight, which is good practice for the new plot, except I think they're getting more joy out of beheading palm trees and igniting sand into glass than out of rehearsing actual swordsmanship. Pyro is snoring, rings of smoke puffing from his nostrils. The mermaids are having snail races, betting with pearls. Trog the troll is playing his flute. The fairies have braided daisy chains that were weaving through Sock's mane. He's beaming so much he basically emits a glow. Orville and Captain Crab are playing 5-card stud, using sand dollars and shells for chips. "What's going on?" I ask, putting my hand on Frump's shoulder. He jumps, scratching his ear, a reflex. Old habits die hard, I guess. Until a couple months ago, Frump was a basset hound. I think people just aren't feeling inspired, Frump says. "Well, how could we?" Seraphima announces, arriving on the page. "We haven't had a reader for she rolls her eyes as if she's counting, and then her eyebrows knit together. For a long time." "Hi, Chloe." I got a book to read from the library, so I'm reading a book for the stream. Seeing her, Frump hops down from his perch. He takes her hand and kisses it. He is so whipped, princess, he says. Every time I think you can't look any more radiant, you prove me wrong. I don't think she looks radiant, I point out. Where's your space gear? She's wearing some silly dress from the Renaissance with little slippers that look about as substantial as socks and are totally inappropriate for kicking alien butt. Oh, do shut up, Edgar, she says with a sigh. As if. The aliens haven't come for us. This is all just a joke. I am a princess. I'm not doing your dirty work for you anymore. Frump and I exchange a glance. On her good days, Seraphima is about as smart as a brick. Somehow, even performing a fairy tale over and over has not clued her into the fact that she is not actually a princess, but only a character in a book. I thought she would be the easiest to convince when I came inside that the story had a new twist, one in which Oliver was an imposter and the fairy tale was a decoy to keep the aliens from Zorg from annihilating our planet. But when she learned that she would no longer be wearing her royal gowns and getting married to a prince every day, she lost interest. Repskilio comes up to us. Hate to interrupt, he says, but I can't help noticing that everyone here is a little, shall I say, on edge. I've been taking a self-taught course on conflict resolution, and while I don't mean to belittle your contributions, Edgar, but the problem does seem to be stemming from the revisions to the story. Seraphima has a point. It's been a while since we had a reader, and one can only assume that perhaps the changes aren't as appealing to our audience. Maybe we should try returning to the original version. You can learn Oliver's lines, and as for the rest of the cast, we can go back to doing what we do best. We're pirates and princesses and fairies, not space warriors. The mermaids know how to scare the living daylights out of sailors. Socks is a grand master of dressage. His gaze cuts across the beach to where Snort is setting Biggle's hair on fire with an errant laser beam. And the trolls really should stick to construction without power tools. It's easier to change one character than to change 30. I suppose I could have worked my way into the book by switching Oliver's name to mine, by deleting him from his own life and replacing him with me. But that isn't what I signed up for. What if it turns out I'm stuck here, doing something I never asked to do? The whole reason I agreed to swap with Oliver was because I'd get a chance to experience adventures and thrills I'd only witnessed on a computer screen. But every time you play a video game, it's different. In this world, it's like I play a tape of the same game over and over again. I know what's around the corner, I know what creature is going to jump out at me, I know when the aliens are landing, and that I will ultimately kill Zorg. The element of surprise is gone, and that was the fun in the first place. Now I get why Oliver wanted to leave. But if he knew this was a prison, why would he wish it on anyone else? You know, I say, what we all need is a breather. Seraphima stomps her tiny foot. I absolutely refuse to put on any more gear. I just mean we need a break. I turn to Frump. Do you want to do the honors? Frump climbs back onto his perch and barks. Even though in my revised story, he's been changed from a basset hound back to a human again, I guess you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Attention, he cries. All characters are dismissed for the day. There is a moment of shocked silence on the beach, and then a bustle of excitement and activity as everyone realizes that they're being left to their own devices. The fairies zip by my face like fireworks. Milady, Frump says to Seraphima, since we have a bit of a break, maybe you could walk me? Maybe we could go for a walk? The princess's eyes flicker over him. Rain check? She picks up her skirts and floats across the sand towards the edge of the page. Frump looks disappointed for only a second, then turns to me. I guess I'll head out too, he says. Someone has to make Seraphima's bed before she realizes she doesn't actually have handmaidens. Suddenly, a blinding light slices the sky in half. I wince, raising my hand as a shield. The ground shifts under my feet, and I watch everyone instinctively grabbing the nearest solid object. A tree, a rock, a dangling participant. I go tumble head over heels and smack into a troll's bottom, which feels like the side of a battleship. Sorry, I mumble, and Trog shrugs. No worries, we've all had a bit more practice. The sand stops whirling and the ocean settles as the page flattens. I find myself looking up at a giant replica of my own face. Oliver, Frump says, his butt wagging. Seraphima races from the edge of the page to stand front and center, her hands clasped over her chest. Queen Maureen, who appeared on Ever After Beach with everyone else as soon as the book was open, waves with delight. The characters, excited about being pulled into place for an actual reader, are even more pumped to see who it is. Oliver, on the other hand, doesn't look so happy. Is everything all right? He asks. A second face appears beside his, Delilah's. She looks scared to death. Frump tugs at the hem of his shirt. We're fine, he says cheery. You know how it goes, business as usual. I mean, granted, we haven't had too many readers lately. Their faces relax. Then who sent the note? Oliver asks. I frown. What note? Hold on tight, Oliver says, and the world spins again as he gently lifts the book, turning it away from him. It seems to be a girl's bedroom, blurry, the way things look underwater. I see a crapload of pink, and as things slowly start to come into focus, I can make out a collage of pictures over the bed. Most of them are of Delilah, with a girl who looks like a pierced hedgehog. I mean, a really pretty pierced hedgehog, but still. I don't understand why Oliver's showing us Delilah's wall. Then I notice the floating letters. Come home. What is that? I ask. The book tilts it and rights itself again so that Oliver hovers above us. I assume you would be able to tell me. Well, I didn't write it, I say. Rapsculia, Oliver asks. It came from your easel. Sorry, Ollie, the only thing I've drawn lately is a Tianopalpus imperialis. Gorgeous specimen with iridescent wings, normally found in India. And perhaps someone else has been using your easel? Oliver interrupts. He peers at each of the characters in turn. We all start glancing at each other nervously, wondering who is unhappy and unwilling to admit it. Guess I'm not the only one. Could it be Frump missing his best friend? Maureen missing her fictional son? Could Rapsculia's comments about the new version of the story not working out be the only tip of the iceberg? Could Seraphima, stuck with a guy like me, be dreaming of the prince she used to have? It's hard to believe that I could be just as much of a disappointment in the world of this book as I was in reality. Frump clears his throat, the way he does when he's commanding us to start rehearsal. It appears that all of us are just fine, he tilts up his chin, but enough about us. How are you? A slow grin stretches over Oliver's face. This place, he says, it's everything I dreamed of. There are so many people in this world, I can't name them all. When I talk to them, I have absolutely no idea what they're going to say. Every day since I've been here has been different, but there are so many scenes you could spend your life trying and never see them all. His eyes cut to Delilah, and of course, he says, the company is rather enchanting. Oliver takes Delilah's hand and kisses the back of it. To my right, I hear Seraphima draw in her breath, and Frump moves slightly closer to her. How's my mom? I blurt out. Until I said that, I don't realize how much she has been on my mind. I wonder if she could tell that Oliver isn't me. It's really hard to think that I'm missing her, but she has no idea she's supposed to be missing me. She's perfect, except when she tells me to clean my room. My chest gets tight. She does that a lot. A strange expression must cross to my face because Oliver's gaze narrows on mine. Edgar, he asks, are you all right? I open my mouth, about to tell him the truth. I miss my mom. I miss my home. Nobody likes me here. Nobody likes my story. Nothing is going the way I planned. But all that comes out is great. My face tightens into what might pass for a smile. Well, if you're sure, Oliver replies. Delilah's mother is about to serve supper. He hesitates. I miss you all. I miss you a lot. There are many people in this world, but none like you. Then he tosses us another smile. All right then, hang on tight. As he starts to close the book, as we tumble through the pages, I hear his voice fading away. I promise I'll read you later. As the characters disperse, I listen to their chatter. Socks walks with Captain Crab. He looks great, doesn't he? So handsome. He looks happy, Maureen adds. What more could a mother ask for her son? The mermaids slip into the shallows of the water. I guess you can eat, breathe, and sleep true love, Kyrie says, but I'd go for chocolate, the oxygen, and the feather bed instead. Seraphima is the only one frowning. She walks off the page slowly, her arms wrapped tightly around her body as if she's hoping to hold herself together. I sit down on the beach, tossing the remaining sand dollars from the poker game into the water. When Frump comes up behind me, I'm surprised. I thought I was alone. You did a good thing, Edgar, he says. What do you mean? You're not the only one hiding something to make him happy. Frump turns around, lifting up the back of his shirt to reveal a long brown and white tail. He faces me again, sober. Rapsculio may be more right than he knows. It's not just the characters who want to return to the original story, it's the book. Think about the last time you got a new shirt. What made it new? That the tag still itched? That it smelled like the store and not detergent? That you weren't used to seeing it hanging in your closet when you opened the door? That you wanted to wear it more than any of your other clothes? Because it was unique? At some point, the shirt stopped being so special. At some point, it became just another shirt in your wardrobe. When does something stop being new? When does it start just being yours? Oliver, next chapter. There's a treadmill in Jessamine Jacobs' spare bedroom, where she runs for an hour every day, going absolutely nowhere. This, Delilah has informed me, is exercise. To me, it seems pointless. There's a little red wristband that she wears while she's running in case she falls off the moving walkway or gets hurt. If this happens, a cord on the wristband makes the machine stop dead. I imagine that is exactly what happened when I left the book. I pulled the cord, and everyone else stayed frozen in the moment, static, waiting for me to start them up again. But I suppose I was just kidding myself. They all seemed to be going on with their lives and their stories as if they never needed me in the first place. I should be happy for them. I should feel good about the fact that they, like me, have moved on. But I'm fairly certain happiness doesn't feel like a stone in the pit of one's stomach. When I opened the book and I saw that beach, I could still picture myself looking up at the words hanging like balloons in the sky. I could feel the spray of the ocean and the sun beating hot on the back of my tunic. For the first time, I can remember seeing Seraphima was a delight, not a chore. I couldn't even make eye contact with Queen Marine because it hurt too much. And Frump, well, seeing him on Ever After Beach so happy and human, I wanted to be excited for him. But all I noticed was him standing beside Edgar, and how easily Edgar seemed to have replaced me. Once upon a time, Frump and I swapped out the salt for the sugar in Queen Marine's pantry, causing her to make the world's most inedible cake for a birthday party for Ondine, the mermaid. Then there was the time we painted Sock's electric pink while he was fast asleep. I can't count the number of hours we spent playing chess on the beach, using the fairies as pieces. Sometimes I wouldn't even have to tell Frump what I was thinking. He just knew. I can't imagine my life without Delilah in it. But to be honest, I always believed Frump would be there too. I reach over Delilah's bed to the words "come home," which are still floating like lanterns, and I crush them in the palm of my hand. They leave smudges on my skin. When I toss them in the trash, they look like a tangle of black ribbon. Delilah puts her hand on my arm. "Are you okay?" I nod. I thought they might need me a little more." "I need you," she leans forward, and I tuck her against me. Her skin is soft as satin. This is what's real. This is why I'm real. It's Delilah's idea to take a walk in the woods. We strike out behind her house, following an overgrown path littered with fallen leaves the color of fire. "I used to come here and make fairy houses out of acorns and pine needles and twigs," she says. "That's ridiculous," I scoff. "Fairies would never live on the ground. They'd be stepped on. They make their homes in the notches of trees." She laughs. "Well, not all of us have the benefit of first-hand experience. I had a spot in the enchanted forest where I used to play with Frump as a child. It looks just like this," I tell her. "We built a fort between two boulders and spent hours trying to hunt a squirrel for dinner. Queen Marine would let you eat a squirrel?" "No," I admit. "Luckily, we never caught one." "Come here," she says. "I want to show you something." She takes my hand and leads me through a thicket of overgrown bush and tangled roots, which opens suddenly into a small clearing. A canopy of leaves filters the sunlight above us, dappling the ground. A willow tree arches like a dancer, its arms extended and its long hair cascading. Delilah parts the vines, revealing a mossy log. She sits down and passes the space beside her. "I used to come here when I wanted to run away from home. I think about Delilah's cozy house, her attentive mother. Why would you do that? Because no one is always happy where they are. Every time I got mad at my mom or frustrated because she was working too hard to be around a lot, I wanted to escape. So I pack everything I thought I should take with me into my pillowcase, and I'd come here. And then by the time the sun went down, I couldn't remember what had made me want to leave in the first place. All I could think of was the dinner my mother was probably cooking, and the way my pillow sank down just the way I liked, and my favorite pair of pajamas. It was all those little things that reminded me of why I couldn't run away. She looks up at me. I'm scared, Oliver. I'm scared the sun is just going to go down and you're going to realize you want to go home. I frame her face in my hands, looking into her eyes. I am home, I tell her. After supper, Delilah's mother pulls out a stack of photo albums. Delilah is mortified, her cheeks flaming, but I can't get enough of the pictures. I watch her morph from a tiny baby, waving a pair of oversized sunglasses, to a child on a swing, to a young girl in a sunflower dress at her piano recital. Delilah's mother sits beside me, the dog curled at her feet. Look, Lila, she says, turning the page to reveal a preteen, all angles and elbows with a full mouth of metal. Remember how we thought you were going to have your braces till you were 30? At that, Delilah practically leaps over me, slamming the album closed. Shut it down, she says. Kids grow up so fast, her mother says. Edgar, I'm sure your mother would agree. Maybe not, I murmur under my breath. I've been a teenager my whole life. Delilah's mom strokes the cover of the photo album as if she would rather give up her life than lose what's inside. It's exactly the way Delilah looked when she used to open the fairy tale. Her mother glances from Delilah to me. One day, you two will understand. Oh my God, Mom, no. Delilah pulls her mother to her feet. Don't you have a date to get ready for? The date in question is with Delilah's former psychiatrist, Dr. Ducharme. I would have expected Delilah to be less than pleased, but actually she's overjoyed. Once they started dating, Delilah stopped having to go for appointments because it was a conflict of interest. Mrs. McPhee looks at her wristwatch. You're right. Greg's going to be here in 15 minutes. Delilah, help me with the dishes? Humphrey leaps to his stubby feet, waddling into the kitchen behind them in the hopes of catching some drop scraps. Meanwhile, I carry the albums to the shelf where Delilah's mother found them. As I return them to their spots, I notice one thin slice of an album labeled Halloween. Inside it, Delilah changes from a pumpkin to a gypsy queen, to a monkey, to a bunch of grapes. On the next page, I pause. Delilah is young, maybe 6 or 7. She is wearing a blue ball gown, long white gloves, and a jeweled tiara. This is what she might have been like had we met as children in the middle of my world instead of hers. With a grin, I slip the photograph out of its protective sleeve and into my pocket. She would have made a lovely princess. On Saturday, I run out of clothes. Unlike in the fairy tale, where there's always a fresh tunic and hose whenever I need them, in this world, one is left to one's own devices to ensure a clean wardrobe. For the first month or so, I didn't even notice the difference. Jessamine would simply disappear with my hamper full of worn clothes, and they'd be magically returned, pressed and folded into my bureau. But today, when I pull out the drawer, there's a single folded shirt. I check my closet and realize my dirty clothes are still in the hamper. Perhaps Jessamine has forgotten? I call out for my pseudo-mother, but there's no answer. Jessamine told me she might go grocery shopping today, another extraordinary inconvenience in this world. In the book, our pantry is always full. But I'm not in the book. I'm not a prince. I have to learn to take care of myself. How hard could this possibly be? Cheerfully, I carry the hamper down the stairs into the laundry room, where I've watched Jessamine go through the motions at least a dozen times. I know it involves pouring the liquid soap and pushing a series of buttons. I dump the tangle of laundry into the belly of the metal beast and pick up the bottle of detergent to read the directions. Fill cup. What cup? I wander into the kitchen and stare at the glasses that we use at the dinner table. There are 2 sizes, a tiny one for juice and a large one for water. Well, the cleaner the better, I think, reaching for the larger glass. In the laundry room, I fill it to the brim with blue detergent and then add an extra splash just to make sure I have enough. I close the lid and press the big green start button. The machine shakes to life, grumbling and gurgling as it fills with water. I lean against it, awfully pleased with myself. Wait until I tell Delilah what I've done all on my own. That's what I'm thinking anywhere, when the back of my shirt suddenly grows sopping wet. I spin around. My eyes widen at the washing machine, which is foaming at its mouth. It spews bubbles at an alarming rate, froth cascading to the floor. I try to scoop it up in my arms, hastily shoving as much as I can into the empty dryer. But I fail spectacularly to keep up. By now my sneakers are hidden in a white sea, and the bubbles have leaked out of the small laundry room into the hallway. I run to the phone, slipping and falling 3 times on the way. By the time I reach it, I'm wearing a suit of bubbles, and I have trouble holding the receiver without it sliding from my palm. I wonder if perhaps I will be the first person to die by drowning in soap. Delilah answers on the second ring. Thank God, I say, I'm having a crisis. What's wrong? She asks. The washing machine has exploded. Wait, Delilah says. What? I tried to do my own laundry and... I'll be right there, she interrupts. The phone goes dead in my hand. I turn, looking towards the laundry room. A river of foam oozes from the doorway. I trudge through it, kicking at the bubbles, and climb on top of the machine, which bucks beneath me like a spirited stallion. Maybe if I could just keep the lid shut, the bubbles will diminish. This is how Delilah finds me 15 minutes later, huddled on top of the washing machine, clutching it for dear life. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay. Bye. What the? Before Delilah can finish, she slips in the bubbles and goes completely under. She surfaces with a white beard and hat. Oliver, she says, laughing, how much soap did you use? It said a cup. Was it the Stanley cup, she asks? I don't know Stanley or his cup. It was a regular glass from the kitchen. She puts her hand on her forehead, then reaches for the detergent. Its blue bottle only dimly visible in the catastrophe of bubbles. She unscrews its tiny cap and holds it out to me. This is a cup, Oliver. It holds roughly 1/8 the amount of soap that I used. Delilah breaststrokes forward, shoveling bubbles out of the way. She reaches past me for the illuminated panel and presses a button. The machine shudders to a stop. I let out a sigh of relief. Delilah glares at me. I cannot believe you did this. I grin, scoop a dollop of bubbles onto my finger, and touch it to her nose. She wipes it away, pretending to be annoyed, but then she lifts a handful of bubbles and palms my face with it. Laughing, we fight a war in a battlefield of soap, slipping out of each other's embrace as we tumble to the ground. Then I kiss her, or maybe she kisses me, until we're completely enveloped in a foam cocoon, and for a few moments neither of us cares a bit about the mess. Eventually, though, reality comes crowding in, when the taste of Delilah begins to morph into the bitter taste of detergent. I sit up, pulling her with me. How do we get rid of all this? I ask, gesturing at the foamy swamp that surrounds us. Delilah rummages in the ceiling in the cleaning closet, and returns with a blue bucket. She scoops an armful of bubbles inside and instructs me to go dump them in the bathtub upstairs. She does the same, using Jessamine's spaghetti pot. We cart the evidence one trip at a time, running cold water in the tub until the soap dissolves down the drain. Finally, we mop the floors and walls with towel, leaving the house in an even tidier state than it was, ironically. Then we collapse onto the floor, exhausted. I suppose I should be grateful you didn't start your independent streak by attempting to flambe baked Alaska, Delilah says. Her hair is straggling out of her ponytail, and her shirt has started to dry stiffly against her skin. But despite the mess, she's still the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. I cut my hand around the back of her neck, pulling her closer. You know, your pupils get bigger the closer you get to me. That means you love me. Or that you're blocking my light. I laughed. My girlfriend is such a romantic. Leaning forward, I start to kiss her when suddenly the door kicks open and Jessamine walks in holding 2 large grocery bags. Delilah and I spring apart, putting a foot of space between us. Jessamine's brow furrows as she examines the 2 of us, still drenched and matted. What on earth happened to you 2? I offer my most brilliant smile. We cleaned the house. A week of high school has taught me the following. 1. Packing one's own lunch is preferred to eating the questionable mass that is served in the cafeteria. 2. Nobody actually studies in study hall. 3. The same 6 boys in gym class play the game of the day as if their lives depend on it, no matter if the game is dodgeball or badminton. 4. Everyone has a phone, but no one ever seems to use it to make a phone call. 5. There is something called Facebook that is neither a face nor a book. I've noticed that the school isn't divided by grades as much as it is by personality. There are 2 boys who insist on carrying their lacrosse sticks to each class as if it is a standard bearing to the family crest. Some students take notes as though they are writing a novel, while others don't even pick up a pen, but instead paint their nails and regard their features in the tiniest of mirrors while the teacher speaks. A roving gang of minstrels used the school as a performing ground, riding wheeled boards down the staircase rails, hopping over concrete benches in the main entrance. There are some who look like creatures of the night, pale as the moon, with black hair and painted eyes, and jewelry shaped like skulls. And then there are girls I can't even look at without blushing. The one who dress in so little clothing that I asked Delilah if they worked at the local brothel. Unlike the characters in the book, however, these different sorts of people don't seem to mix well. It seems like the salad dressing Jessamine makes, a little bit of olive oil, a squeeze of lemon, and some red wine vinegar. If whipped, they combine, but leave them to their own devices, and they will sort themselves out again. I don't really understand this. When you have so many people, each one inevitably fascinating, why do you limit yourself to only those like you? If I behaved as most of the students in the school do, I would never have talked to Charlie, who recruited me for the fencing team, or Daryl, who sells homemade sock puppets to raise money for children in Uganda, or Tina, who is having a baby this winter. I wouldn't have joined the drama club and the ultimate frisbee team and the Dungeons and Dragons Society, though truly I was born for that. It doesn't matter to me if the person I'm speaking with is talking about comic books or sales at Sephora or how many touchdowns he made at the homecoming game. I just like listening. I guess that's maybe because it's easy for me to move between groups. Instead of feeling as if I'm being judged by someone different from me, I learn from them. Today in pre-calc, Mr. Ellick is explaining the standardized examination that we will be taking on Saturday morning, a day we usually do not have to go to school, when I'm usually with Delilah instead. The test has something to do with sitting and sounds relatively simple, since all we have to do is fully fill in the bubbles with a number 2 pencil. After the 5th time he repeats this, I begin to tune out. Sketching mermaids and pirate ships in the margins of my notebook, suddenly a pencil lands in front of me and I look up. Raj, the skinny kid sitting to my left, holds up his calculator. Across the screen is a number. 58008. I lift a shoulder, shrugging. Raj grins and spins his calculator so the numbers are now upside down. 80085. Boobs, Raj mouths silently and giggles. I laugh out loud, and Mr. Ellick turns. Edgar, is there something you'd like to share? I smile. I'm super excited for this test, that's all, he sighs. I know. Everyone hates the SATs, but it's a necessary evil, like flossing and in-laws. The bell rings, and I turn to Raj. What else can you spell? Tomorrow, I'll show you how to draw a naked girl in Microsoft Word. After math class, Delilah and I meet up at her locker. When she approaches, I've got my nose buried in my calculator. You can take the guy out of the math classroom, she says, but you can't take the math out of the guy. I laugh and proudly present my calculator screen. 31770. Let me guess, your prison number? I put my hand over hers, twisting her wrist so that it's upside down. 07713. Ollie. How cool is that? I say proudly. I can type my name and numbers. Delilah smiles. I see pre-calc is really paying off for you. Wait, I'm not done. I take the calculator back and write boobs and then show it to her. She rolls her eyes. You're acting like such a teenage boy. I am one, I say proudly. Wasn't that exactly what you wanted? Delilah turns the calculator off and gives it back to me. I should have listened to that genie, she replied. Be careful what you wish for. In the fairy tale, countless armies faced Pyro the dragon. Grown men shook in their armor, crying out for their mothers as the flames licked their shields. They pleaded with the heavens and sank to their knees, certain they had met their end of days. The fear of these men was nothing compared to the faces of students surrounding me as Mr. Ellick begins to pass out the SAT reasoning tests. A cheerleader sitting behind me is swallowing convulsively, as if her breakfast is about to come face to face with my back. Raj keeps checking the battery life on his calculator. Even Chris looks a little pale. I don't understand why everyone's panicking, I whisper to Chris. All you have to do is color in the circles. It's not about how you color the circles, it's about finding the right answer to know which ones you have to color. Based on this test, I could wind up at Harvard or bagging groceries for the rest of my life. No more talking, Mr. Alex says. We're about to begin. He lifts up a piece of paper and begins to read from it. A litany of directions that has something to do with sections and time and point systems that sound like gibberish to me. I stare at the grid of circles that will apparently decide my destiny. Now everyone, break your seals, Mr. Alex says, and begin. I do as he says and then look down at the first question in my booklet. For pumpkin carving, Mr. Smith will not use pumpkins that weigh less than 2 pounds or more than 10 pounds. If X represents the weight of a pumpkin in pounds, he will not use which of the following of inequalities represent all possible values of X. A, B, C, D, or E. What the devil is wrong with a man who doesn't even know how to use a proper scale? If he keeps reading X, it's time to purchase a new one. Clearly, this is a trick question. So, in response, I decide that the best use of my time is to fill in the circles in a way that will be most pleasing to the eye of the person who is grading it. I must say, the picture I create is really a masterpiece. There's a silhouette of a fire-breathing dragon and a swashbuckling prince holding his sword aloft. Put down your pencils, Mr. Alex says. I glance at Raj. He seems to have forgotten how to blink. Now we will begin the next section, the teacher reads. I pick up my pencil, delighted. I think this time I'll draw a castle. On Mondays, during activity period, I drop Delilah off at the school library, where she works shelving books. We move through the halls holding hands, which seems rather tame when compared to couples like Brangelo, who are basically mating as they navigate the building, blindly slamming into lockers and terrified freshmen. The buzz that morning in school is still about the dreaded SAT test. It wasn't that bad, I tell Delilah. I don't want to brag, but my dragon was rather creative. Is that a metaphor? No, I drew a dragon, literally. She bursts out laughing. The guidance counselors are going to have you committed. Delilah releases my hand and links her arm through mine instead, hugging me closer. So I was thinking, you and I have never been on a real date. We've had supper with your mother. That does not even begin to count. Then what did you have in mind, I ask. Well, Delilah looks up at me. It's like the sun coming out from behind a cloud. I thought maybe, yo, Edgar, I hear, and I turn around to see the captain of the school hockey team passing by. He fist bumps me over Delilah's head. Hey, thanks for the help in English. I totally passed the test. Anytime, I say. I turn back to Delilah. You were saying? I was just thinking we could go out to a restaurant, Suddenly, James appears in front of us. You coming to Friday's meeting, Edgar? I nod. Wouldn't miss it. I'm bringing the snack. Awesome, James says, and at the last minute acknowledges Delilah. Hey, he says, nodding before he walks past. Delilah's grip tightens on my arm. Anyway, she exhales, I was thinking maybe you'd like to go try Chinese food. Edgar, a gaggle of girls surrounds me, picking at me like chickens with their questions. Did you do the history reading? Should I get a pixie cut? Can you show me how to throw a frisbee sometime? Is it true that you went to camp with Harry Styles? I can feel Delilah's nail dig into my skin. Girls, I say, I'll catch up with you later. Then I turn the full force of my charm on Delilah. Where were we? I was making dinner plans, she answered, her voice tight. You were signing autographs. I watch her turn into the library, completely confounded. The problem is that Delilah brought me into her world, but now it's mine too. At Miss Pingree urging, I've joined the drama club. They meet during activity period as well, in the school auditorium. Every week, we act out scenes from different plays. Last Monday, it was Tennessee Williams. This time, it's Shakespeare. I must admit, Shakespeare is a more comfortable fit for me. Now, Romeo and Juliet is something you should all be able to relate to. Two teenagers who can't keep their hands off each other, even though circumstances are forcing them apart. Edgar, Miss Pingree says, would you like to take the reins as Romeo today? This is not a surprise. I'm the only male in the drama club. It would be my greatest pleasure, I say, as Miss Pingree's hand goes to her heart. Now, who shall be our tragic Juliet? The hands of 15 girls in the room shoot up. Claire, dear, Miss Pingree points. How about you? Claire has an upturned nose and a cloud of fuzzy red hair, and she favors a sweatshirt with a sequin unicorn on the front. She rises, unable to make eye contact with me as she steps forward, giggling uncontrollably. Before she can reach the stage, however, Allie McAndrews slaps her aside. I'll take this one. I reach toward Claire, trying to help her up, but I'm yanked away by Allie, who pulls me into the center of the stage with the brute force of an ogre. She tosses her shining hair and looks up at me from beneath her lashes. You ready? I toss a sympathetic glance towards poor Claire, who is still attempting to get up from where Allie shoved her, and then clear my throat. If I profane with my unworthiest hand this holy shrine, I say, the gentle fine is this, my lips, two blushing pilgrims, ready, stand, to smooth that rough touch with a tender kiss. It figures, the most romantic scene in the most romantic play in all of literature, and my stage partner is Delilah's worst nightmare. I draw in my breath. For years, I acted as if I were truly in love with Seraphima. This can't be any worse. So I stare into Allie McAndrew's eyes, and I imagine Delilah's. I reach for Allie's hand, and I pretend I am holding on to the love of my life. Good pilgrim, you do wrong your hand too much. Which mannerly, Miss Pingree interrupts. Mannerly, Allie repeats. Devotion shows in this. For saints have hands that pilgrims' hands do touch. I raise the flat of my hand and press hers against it, and palm to palm, she says, transfixed, is holy Palmer's kiss. Stepping forward, I gently brush a strand of hair away from her cheek. My voice drops to a whisper. Have not saints' lips, and holy Palmer's too? Allie stares at me gaping. Line, I call out. Miss Pingree reads, Aye, pilgrim. Aye, pilgrim, Allie parrots. Lips they must use in prayer. I groan. Oh, then, dear saint, let lips do what hands do. They pray, grant thou, lest faith turn to despair. Her gaze is steady, luminous, hopeful. Saints do not move, though grant for prayer's sake. I cup her face with my hands. Then move not, I murmur, while my prayer's effect I take. I lean in, close my eyes, and kiss her. As our lips meet, the seal of the auditorium door opens, admitting a slice of light that immediately draws my attention. Standing there is Delilah, looking as if I have crushed her. She turns around while Allie is still in my arms and starts to run. Delilah, I cry, and I jump off the stage to race after her. I chase Delilah past the gym, out the back doors of the school, and into the deserted student parking lot just before I manage to grasp her arm. Just let me explain, I say. She rounds on me, furious. No, Delilah says, this isn't your book. You don't get to close it and start over. I was just reading lines. How is this any different from what I had to do every day with Seraphima when I was part of the fairy tale? Back then you had no choice, but this time you could have said no. Her eyes well up. I realize with a pang that I've never made Delilah cry before. How could you do this to me, and with her? I didn't do anything to you. I was acting. She means nothing to me. That's not how it looked, Delilah argues. It might as well have been real. Frustration flares inside me, making heat rise to my cheeks. That's the point of drama club. She scoffs. You know, I actually came to the auditorium because I felt bad about the way I treated you back at the library, but now I realize I have nothing to apologize for. Just go back to Allie. It's obvious where you want to be. As much as I want to fix things with Delilah, I don't understand why I'm in the wrong. For heaven's sake, Delilah, how many times do I have to say it? She's just a friend. She's a bitch. You just don't see it yet. She once told me that my new haircut made my face look less fat. That's a compliment. I hadn't gotten a haircut, Delilah says, her teeth clenched. She sped a rumor about Jules being a hermaphrodite. When one of her own friends finished a treatment program for eating disorders, Allie told her she was pretty enough now to be a plus-size model. You're just being as judgmental as you claim Allie is, I point out. Have you ever even tried to open up your friend circle beyond a single person and get to know her? You might find she isn't the monster you make her out to be if you just talk to her. Delilah's eyes glitter with tears. You weren't just talking, she whispers, and she walks away. For the rest of the day, I keep replaying my fight with Delilah. I don't hear anything around me. I don't see anything in front of me. When I walk down the halls, even though they're crowded, they seem empty. At home, when Jessamine asks how my day went, I walk right past her and into my bedroom, shutting out the world. This isn't the first time I've had troubles, but it's the first time I haven't had anyone to share them with. In the past, my confidants were Frump and Queen Marine, but even if the fairy tale were in my possession and not Delilah's, I know I couldn't turn to them. They're happy, and my problems should no longer be theirs. I fall asleep, tossing fitfully. My dreams are full of Delilah, the tears that made her eyes too bright, The way her voice shook, the expression on her face when I turned out to not be the person she'd hoped I would be. In the book, it was so easy. I fell in love, I kissed the girl, she left me back unconditionally. I never had a script for an apology. Suddenly, I understand all the facades Frump put on, trying to win Seraphima's heart. I know what it feels like when being oneself isn't good enough. I wish that someone would flip backward through the pages of the story of me and Delilah, bringing us back to the once upon a time. I wake with a start, the blankets tangled around my feet. My hair is damp with sweat, my fists curled in the sheets, and nothing has changed. Delilah is still farther away from me than she's ever been. I have to make this right. I swing my legs over the edge of the bed and then sit down in front of the computer. There is a little green circle next to Delilah's name. I quickly click call, waiting for her face to fill the screen. Instead, a box pops up. Call ended. Before I can try again, the little circle next to Delilah's name disappears. I bury my face in my hands. What's the point of being in this world without her? All right, I think. Pull yourself together, Oliver. It's perfectly normal to feel overwhelmed. This is a problem I've never encountered before. It has nothing to do with getting out of the pages of a book or seeing letters appear in midair or bleeding ink. For once, it is a completely ordinary problem that could affect any teenage boy who quarreled with his girlfriend, which means that maybe I'm not alone after all. The house is dark, although it is only 8 p.m. Jessamine has left dinner for me on the kitchen counter, but I am not hungry. I pad upstairs again and pause outside of her bedroom. Slowly, I open the door, fearing that she may already be asleep. Jessamine is perched on the edge of her bed. When she hears the door creak, she whips around, wiping her eyes. It takes me aback. I've been so wrapped up in my own problems that I never stop to consider I might not be the only one who is struggling. Are you all right? I'm fine. I just have a bad headache. That's all. She fakes a smile. No, you're ill. I'll leave you be. I don't know Jessamine Jacobs very well, but in that moment, she looks very small and very tired. Good night, Edgar, she says. Good night, Mom. I start to pull the door closed behind me, and at the last moment, duck back inside. Try leeches, I suggest helpfully. They work wonders for me. Dude, what's up with you? Chris asks me. You've been staring at that beaker for like 15 minutes. Delilah and I had quite an argument yesterday, I say, solemnly measuring out hydrochloric acid. We have been left to our own devices to complete the day's chemistry lab. I'm trying to follow directions to the letter because I'm so distracted I fear I may accidentally cause an explosion. Delilah wasn't waiting for me today when I arrived at school. She wasn't at my locker. Chris hands me an eyedropper. Girls go crazy. It's just what they do. Give her a couple of days to chill and she'll forgive you for whatever you did. He glances at me. What was it anyway? I kissed Allie McAndrews. Chris winces. Bro, Delilah's not coming back to you. Thank you so much for the support, I mutter. Well, damn, what were you thinking? We were role-playing, I explain. Call it whatever you want, Chris says, smirking. It was for the drama club. Delilah walked in at the worst possible moment. He shakes his head. I don't know what to tell you, man. From her point of view, it doesn't look good. I pass him the evaporating dish so he can hold it over the Bunsen burner. I do anything to take it back. Well, unless you have a time machine, that's not going to happen, Chris says. What you need is a grand gesture. Something that makes her completely forget what she saw. I don't understand. I'm talking going all out. Flowers, get down on one knee, confess your love. Haven't you ever seen The Notebook? I look at him dubious. That sort of thing really works? Chicks eat it up, Chris assures me. The evaporating dish cools, leaving behind pure white crystals, tiny diamonds. It is remarkable to think that something so beautiful was born from acid. Maybe Chris is right. Maybe there's still hope for me. I just wish there was a recipe that I could follow that would make it easier. What's wrong? Jessamine asks that evening when we are sitting at dinner. Nothing, I say, using my fork to push around the peas on my plate. Well, you're not eating. Or at least, you're not eating as much as usual. I put down my utensils. Did you ever fight with Dad? I asked. No, Jessamine answers, straight-faced. We were like Barbie and Ken. Before I can even ask who on earth they are, she continues. Of course we fought, honey. All couples argue. If you're in a relationship and you're not fighting, you're probably doing something wrong. Delilah saw me kissing another girl, I blurt out. She chokes on a sip of her water. Excuse me? Is one girl not enough? It isn't what you think, I explain. It was part of a play. I might have to take her side on this one. I rest my head on my hands. I'd apologize, but she won't even give me the chance to speak. Jessamine's gaze softens. Once I bought a brand new pair of designer heels. I had them in a bag outside of my closet door. When I came back that night before bedtime, the shoes had disappeared. I asked your father if he had seen them. He said, "Oh, you mean the stuff you put out for Goodwill?" He accidentally donated a pair of Jimmy Choos to charity. She shakes her head, lost in the memory. I didn't speak to him for a week. Then what happened? She grins. He bought me an even more expensive pair. I don't think that shoes will work here, I say glumly. It's not about the shoes, Jessamine replies. It's about what the shoes represent. A simple "I'm sorry" can go a long way. If she ever listens to me again, give her time, she'll hear you out. But it hurts me to know that I can't fix this. Well, Jessamine says, imagine how much it hurt her to see you with someone else. I glance up. I guess you're right. Of course I'm right. I'm your mother. She blots her mouth with a napkin. I'm just glad you're speaking to me. I'm used to you grunting through dinner. My mouth quirks upwards. Thanks, Mom. You're welcome, Joseph. Joseph? I repeat. It's Edgar's father's name. I've seen photos of him with his name and a date scrawled on the back. He looks exactly like King Maurice. Jessamine presses her fingers against her temples. Oh my god, I'm getting so old, she smiles at me. Give it a day. You two will be all over each other. I wince. God, Mom. She laughs. Now there's the Edgar I know and love. At least someone does. I had planned it to perfection. With Miss Pingree's permission, I have raided the drama club costume contest, picking out an ill-fitted yet passable princess tunic, crown, and boots. A plastic sword strapped to my side. I sneak into biology class's greenhouse with a pair of art room scissors and cut the stems of a dozen tulips, gathering them into a bouquet before a teacher can catch me in the act. Then I stride proudly into the cafeteria, my gaze narrowing like a beam on Delilah. I can feel the entire room watching me, and their whispers are cobwebs I easily brush aside. I march to her table, fall to my knee, and present her with the flowers. "Milady," I say, "your eyes are but twin stars in my universe. Your voice is sweeter than a robin's song. You are the very beat of my heart, the rush of my blood." I believe I'm doing quite well. The cafeteria has begun cheering me on. And 2 spots of color appear on Delilah's cheeks. Chris was correct. I'm surely going to win Delilah back. After all, what girl doesn't want a knight in shining armor? Edgar, Edgar, Edgar. My borrowed name echoes the room. Those 2 roses blooming on Delilah's cheeks have somehow spread, making her entire face as red as a lobster. She doesn't meet my eye. And if I'm not mistaken, she seems to be sinking farther and farther under the table. She still hasn't taken the bouquet. I shake it a little, still on my bended knee, and I clear my throat. You're the breath in my lungs. You're done, says Jules, appearing out of nowhere and yank me upright by my velvet collar. Get your royal ass away from my best friend. She tugs at my tunic, spins me around, and shoves me towards the cafeteria door. It's all I can do not to stumble. The voices of the other students follow me out. Nice try, man. Better luck next time. I would have said yes. I realize that I'm still holding the flowers, and they've already begun to die. Slumped against my locker, I'm trying to understand how I've managed to make things even worse than they were. What you need, Raj, is to wow her with your intellect. You know what they say is the largest, most powerful sex organ on the body, right? He taps his skull. The brain. I don't think Delilah wants me to say one more word, Raj. Listen, you walk up to her and you say, "Are you made of nickel, cerium, arsenic, and sulfur? 'Cause you've got a nice ass." When I stare at him blankly, he says, "Get it? The chemical symbols? They spell out..." Oh, never mind. I turn to him. "Have you ever had a girlfriend quarrel with you?" Raj shrugs. "Well, I mean, like, obviously there have been women. Have you ever had a girlfriend?" "I'm not entirely sure," he says. "In 6th grade gym, I did fall off the ropes course and land on top of Charlotte Tazinski. And technically my lips grazed her mouth." He looks at me. "Does that count?" "No, Raj," I sigh. "Not even a little." I drop my head into my hands, closing my eyes, which is why I don't see Allie approach. She crouches down and lifts my chin with one finger, giving my costume a full once-over before she speaks. I see I'm not the only one who can't wait for drama club, she purrs. I push her away. No, Allie, in fact, I think I'm quitting. I'm going to join the football team or something, where I'm less likely to encounter the opposite sex. She smiles at me. You can't tell me that that was all just for show, Edgar. I felt something. I know you felt it too. Honestly, I'm just a good actor, I say. I'm with Delilah. I'm sorry if I did or said anything that made you think otherwise. Her eyes flash, reminding me of the mermaids. Really? She says, her voice cooling. You'd choose that over this? She stands up, skimming her hand over her waist. I took pity on you because you were the new kid, Allie continues. But hey, if you want to socially exile yourself, be my guest. She walks away, hips swinging, her heels staccato on the tile floor. It takes me a moment to remember that Raj is still sitting beside me. His jaw is practically hitting the ground. Did you just break up with Allie? He manages. Are you an idiot? James calls my name at the end of the LGBT Alliance meeting. Your Oreos were a hit, he says. There's only crumbs left. Thanks, I say, distracted. Ever since my run-in with Allie, I've been trying to figure out how and when I can get Delilah alone for just a minute, so that I can make a full apology before Jules tosses me down a flight of stairs. So rumor has it you went full Romeo in the cafeteria today, James says. What's up with that? I was told that a grand gesture is the way to a woman's heart. There's such a thing as too grand, James says. You might want to take it down a notch. What was I thinking? Delilah is not one for show. The happiest hours we spent together were just the two of us, talking through the book. Well, I probably won't even get the chance, I mutter. I'm pretty sure she doesn't want to speak to me. Aren't you the one who told me you believe nothing should stand in the way of two people in love? What's in your way? I look up at James as understanding dawns. Me. Maybe instead of pretending to be someone you're not, you should just be yourself, James says. After all, isn't that who she fell for in the first place? The fog in my head finally clears. I understand what I've been doing wrong. James is correct, but it wasn't just the cafeteria scene that was an act. I've been playing a role the whole time I've been here. I don't know how to apologize like a teenage boy who's gotten into a fight with his girlfriend. I don't know how to figure out who's friend and who's foe. I don't understand the social conventions of high school, but I'm an expert in the happily ever after. Delilah. I'd rather be in Siberia right now, losing all of my extremities to frostbite, or talking to my pet cockroach in a maximum security prison, or sweating buckets in hell. I'd rather be anywhere but in the school cafeteria with everyone laughing at me. I feel my face catching fire. If only it were a real fire, so I could disappear into ash. Jules, my volunteer personal bodyguard, stands with her hands on her hips, ready to body check any soul who dares to come close to me. Not that anyone is trying. They're all applauding for Oliver as he and his ridiculous knight's get-up slink away. All he's ever done is act, Jules points out. Maybe he wasn't expressly trying to humiliate you? Aren't you my best friend? I ask. Whose side are you on? Obviously yours. All I'm saying is maybe you should cut him a little slack. He's been in high school for what, a week? It takes freshmen a whole year before they know what the hell is going on. I look at her. He kissed the one girl in this school who would dance on my grave. No, actually, she would plan a school-wide dance on my grave. Well, you've at least got to give him points for creativity, she says. Oliver used to be creative, back when he was in the book. He had a new idea every time I opened the fairy tale. Some crazy scheme about how to get off the page to be with me. But things were different back then. He was different back then. I thought when Oliver was in the fairy tale that he understood me better than anyone else. I got used to him being pages away, but having him physically and wholly with me is something I was not prepared for. Sensing that he's come into a room before I even turn around to see him, the way his skin always smells like the inky freshness of a new book, the heat of his breath falling into my ear when he whispers my name. If Oliver in the book was captivating, then Oliver in 3D is completely overwhelming. Who would have thought that having your dreams come true would suck so much? I mean, I should be happier than I've ever been. For the first time in my life, the guy I like actually likes me back, and he isn't imaginary. Yet that perfect prince who used to be all mine now has to be shared with the entire world. I guess it should be no surprise that everyone adores Oliver just like I did, but that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt me to see it happen. In the few weeks Oliver's been in school, I've actually noticed a couple of freshmen starting to imitate his style. Classic jeans, solid t-shirt, leather satchel. In the hallway, kids hang on his every word. Girls go out of their way to accidentally bump into him. I know he didn't mean to be popular, to have everyone string along behind him like the tail of a kite. In fact, I thought that the quirks of being a fairy tale character dumped into reality would kind of make him an automatic outsider, like me. But that would be okay, because we would have each other. Instead, he's the Zac Efron of our school, and I'm still absolutely nothing. Oliver doesn't understand because he hasn't been in public school as long as I have. He thinks life is like Disney World, with magic around every corner. He doesn't realize that the longer he hangs out with the cool kids, the harder it's going to be to stay with me. Not that I've really encouraged him to do that lately. I've heard before that love can turn you into someone else, but I never imagined that this is who I'd be, a jealous monster. I don't like who I've become, so why should he? It's hard enough watching the other people want a piece of him, a smile, a conversation, a high five, when he used to be just mine. I can't shake the feeling that if he keeps giving away these pieces, eventually there will be nothing left for me. And then, when I walked into the auditorium and saw him kissing Allie McAndrews, terror flooded me in a way that I've never experienced before. It was like being in a car. The moment you realize the crash is happening, like being tossed off a boat into shark-infested waters only to discover that you're paralyzed. No matter how much he assures me that the kiss meant nothing, that he was only acting, how can I trust him? How can I know that he wasn't also acting when he said that to me? Oliver comes from a place where there is only one person he was meant to be with. Literally. There is only one human girl his age in the book, Seraphima. He has only loved one girl because there was never an alternative, but I can't help feeling that this kiss made him realize that I'm not his only option. Because if you hold me up against Allie McAndrews, I lose every time. I'm doing my best to only make eye contact with the condiments on the table, but from the corner of my eye, I see Allie walking towards me, her entourage in tow. They hang off her like ornaments, the decorations that turn into plain old spruce into a Christmas tree. I square my shoulders, trying to remind myself that without her followers, a mean girl is just a mean girl. She sidles up to my table in a cloud of Chanel perfume and confidence. "Oh no, Allie," Jules says. "Did someone leave your cage open?" She slices a look towards Jules that could cut steel, and then turns to me. "Hey, Deborah," she says. "It's Delilah." Really? She doesn't know my name after I broke her knee and her nose? I honestly can't tell if Allie is intentionally being mean or if she's truly just that stupid. She smiles, revealing a row of perfect teeth. She probably chews Crest white strips like gum. "So I totally had a nightmare last night," Allie says. "I dreamed I was you," she laughs, and the sound echoes through her posse. Jules looks at her with pity. "It's scary to think that people like you are allowed to breed." Allie ignores her. Her gaze is a laser on my face. "Your boyfriend's a great kisser," she says sweetly. "That's it," Jules says, getting to her feet. "Piss off, Allie." Allie glances around, looking at everything but Jules. "Do you hear that?" she replies. It's the sound of no one caring. She and her army strut out of the cafeteria as if their exit had been choreographed. "Don't listen to her," Jules says, hunkering down beside me. "She's irrelevant." I nod and I try to smile at her, but deep down, I'm afraid that Allie is right. No one cares, not even Oliver. I will never forget the morning Oliver first got out of the book. When we realized that we were together, but not two-dimensional or trapped in a fairy tale, we sat on Jessamine Jacobs' porch steps in Wellfleet, and Oliver held onto my hand like a child grabs the string of a balloon, afraid that letting go meant that I would just float away. We truly believed that we had been through the worst, that the struggle of getting Oliver out of the book was no match for any obstacle we would face in the future. It didn't matter that Jessamine lived in Wellfleet and I lived 200 miles away in New Hampshire. It didn't matter that Oliver had to pretend that he had been Edgar Jacobs for his entire life. It didn't matter that my mother was going to ground me for eternity because I ran away. None of it mattered as long as we could sit on the porch step and hold tight to each other. He felt the same way back then. One of the first snafus we discovered when Oliver moved here was realizing that Edgar had his driver's license and Oliver didn't even know what a car was. We couldn't very well stick Oliver behind a wheel without it ending catastrophically. But we also couldn't have Jessamine ask him to drive to the grocery store and wonder why he refused. So we decided he would tell Jessamine that he is now a tree hugger out to single-handedly save the planet, intent on reducing his own personal carbon emissions. It was left to me to teach him how to ride a bike. First, I lowered the seat so that Oliver's feet could brush the ground. Sit, I told him. Don't put your feet on the pedals. Just push around a little. Oliver would take his eyes off the pavement. You know, horses are easier, he muttered. They balance themselves. I would have started with a bicycle, but unfortunately, they don't make them in your size. A tricycle, excuse me. I waited until he met my gaze. Trust me, okay? Eventually, Oliver began to push off the ground a little harder, gliding movements in between. I ran alongside him. But he wouldn't let me step away, and we couldn't go for more than 10 feet before he tipped off the bicycle, falling into my arms. I don't get it, I said, laughing, after this happened 15 times in a row. You climb towers, you leap through pages, why can't you do this? He shook his head, his eyes sliding away from mine. I don't know. Try again, I urged, but this time I'm gonna let go. He climbed on the bike, took a few wobbly pedals forward, and seemingly defying gravity, tumbled off the bike. Oliver knocked me flat on the ground, landing heavily on top of me. His shoulders were shaking, his face buried in my neck. I pushed him off of me, trying to see if he was hurt. Are you all right? When Oliver rolled over, he was laughing so hard he couldn't catch his breath. I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. I figured it out the first time, but you were so cute when you were frustrated. Back then, it seemed like I could never be mad at him. When did we fall out of the honeymoon phase? I lie on my bed, staring up at the ceiling, with Humphrey snuggled against my side. My mom says that even though the dog was a gift for her, he might as well belong to me. He stays on my bed most days when I'm at school, loving me unconditionally. At least someone does.